So, Saul, I'm excited to have you on my podcast. This is great. You and I know each other thanks to your son, Adrian, and we wanted to have an interesting, soulful experience with you, appropriate for your name. So, in your own words, Saul, who are you?
I'm a Jewish-Iraqi born immigrant to India. I lived in Bombay for 50 years. I was born in 1941 during the British Raj.
Right.
So I learned English as the first language. My parents were very, very English. My father came from an upper middle class family.
In Iraq.
In Bombay.
In Bombay.
Iraq had left in the 19th century.
I see.
End of the 19th century with the Sassoon families for business.
I see.
So we lived in South Bombay in a very nice area. We went to a Jesuit school. So I studied supervised by the priests
Right.
in Bombay, and the priests were Spanish or Portuguese.
Huh.
But they spoke English and we learnt English. So basically the background is very, very British.
Right. What did the Jesuit school teach you?
Everything. Every single thing. English language, English literature, maths, coordinate geometry, history, geography, art. So I loved art and I practiced drawing and I was good. So the school decided that I should become an architect because I was good at maths and I was good at drawing.
India is very well known for having a very strong educational system.
Absolutely.
And it's a strong value in the Indian
Very
culture.
much so.
Comparing to the way typically Indians are being educated, what did the Jesuit education give you that was different from what a typical Indian education might have been?
Well, they made us realize the value of life. I would have nothing against the Jesuits, except there was always a slight rumor of the older Jesuit men slightly abusing the children. But it never really affected us, and nobody ever tried it on me. I was a very clever boy. I was a very good sportsman, and I enjoyed life. Life was wonderful. I did what I had to do. I played badminton, I played football, I played hockey, I played cricket, I was a fast bowler, I did everything.
An all-rounder in sports.
Absolutely.
But in education, if I take the European style, where we tend to promote the sciences, for example, studying art, for example, in France, is considered a sort of off the beaten path.
Yeah.
How was it for you to study art when you
I never studied art. There was no question of art. Art was a subject, one of 8 subjects.
Right.
So when I did my GCSEs,
Right.
it was just one item, and the teacher who taught art took me out with my cousin and said, both of you are very good at drawing, and would you like to be an architect? So I never knew what an architect was. I was 16 years old. And my mum explained it to me. And I said, why not? Sounds interesting. So basically, I was led.
Right.
I was led by the Jesuits, who were very kind. I was led by my mother, who was an extremely brilliant woman. And I just went ahead and did what I had to do.
So tell us a little bit more about your family. How many siblings?
Well, my father was 20 years older than my mum. My mum was extremely brilliant. My father was from a very good family, but not that interested in business. So we were 6 of us. My eldest sister, Lillian, she became an actress. She was a very, very beautiful girl. And she worked in Bollywood for a couple of years. She didn't like it. And in 1960, 2. She came to England, got married in London, and lived in London for many, many years. I, of course, became an architect, and I was my mom's favorite. So I stayed on. My younger brothers, the younger one next to me, the boy, became an actuary, came to London to study actuarial science. The still younger one came to London to do accountancy. And today he was my partner in the company which we built in London. And we built the company in 1989.
Right. So up until 1989, so when you leave university, learning you get a degree in architecture.
Yes, that's right.
You practice architecture in Bombay mostly.
Absolutely.
And what sort of architecture did you do?
I thought I would do design, and based on flair and wonderful ideas. But I slowly gravitated towards business. So I mixed architecture with property development and business to make money for my clients.
Right. So the business of building as opposed to building for business.
I designed the buildings with the concept that the people who were my clients made money.
Right. So the building can help them make more money, the way it's designed.
Absolutely.
And so did you do things like hospitals, or are they just specifically?
Not at all.
Never.
Because again, that is based on design, on a specific design. So basically, I built housing.
I see.
So the largest houses I built was 20,000 apartments in Bombay, in the suburbs of Bombay.
That's a big building.
Yes, it was. I did.
It's a mini city.
Yes, a mini city. I did a lot of work, and I enjoyed every moment of it. I worked very hard, but I enjoyed it.
I want to get back to the architecture later, but let's describe the fact that when you came to England.
Yes.
You came to England in 1989, is that accurate?
To live.
To live, yeah.
Yes.
Not the first time, of course, because you already had your sister here since the 60s.
Yeah.
What made you choose to come to England? You had a choice, presumably.
My entire family was here. My wife's family was here. My brothers were here. My sister was here. So for me, it was, and we come every year. I send all my children to London every year on vacation. So it's a second home. So we were comfortable. The language was easy. And there was no problem.
What made you, because Adrian, amongst others, Daniel, you're sending them to university in America. You know the Indian education.
Yes.
You know the English education system. And then yet you chose the American system for university. Why did that happen?
Basically, I always felt America was the most powerful country and a country that was growing. Now we're talking of the early 1980s. And when I trained Adrian to become and to be obsessed with squash. He followed what I did, and he took it way ahead of me.
Right.
And when he became a national champion at the age of 16, which was quite stunning, which was more than I expected.
This is in India.
In India. He was in India at that time.
And that's an era where you have very good Indian players and very good Pakistani players too.
So he became a very, very, very talented player. Now the other boys also went to Harvard. In his classmates, his elder classmates and his squash group. So we thought, why not? So we took him to New York to see if he liked Harvard, Princeton or Yale, because he got offers from all of them. The Americans are not slow. The moment they saw this young boy becoming a national champion, they targeted him. So Princeton, Yale and Harvard, all three said, come to us. We are ready to take you.
And what made the choice a Harvard?
We loved Harvard.
Cambridge,
the
river,
whole
Charles.
system. And not only that, two of the other boys who played squash with Adrian and slightly older than him were in Harvard and very happy.
Oh, for sure. It gives them a little bit of a feeling of homeliness to have two other friends.
Absolutely.
Of course, that makes
The only problem he had, there were no chilies to eat. So the food was a bit bland. She was not very
Perhaps,
happy.
I've always said London is the capital of good Indian food.
Yes.
Do you agree with
but
that?
Not in those days.
Not in those days. All right, so basically, Saul, you had a very half Indian, half English existence, or at least you're dual in culture. What has that duality brought to you, do you think?
Well, as I grow older, I'm beginning to get more Indian.
Why
It's
is that?
quite funny because I was born there.
Yeah.
And that is my spiritual home. So I am very, very British. My concepts are very British. My culture is British. But at the background, that little nagging feeling is Indian.
What does that mean? What does it mean to be Indian for you?
It's the kindest country in the world. It's a culture that I embraced because I was given everything. I had servants, I had a chauffeur, I had money. We had everything. And the people who worked for us never hated us, never felt envious of our success. They lived with us. So we have servants who were virtually brought up with us till they died. In the same family. Nobody changed. They loved the family was part of their family.
A little bit of upstairs, downstairs.
Very much so. Very, very much so.
Right.
You know, you never even thought about it as being separate. Our servants were part of our lives, and we looked after them and loved them.
So another layer in all this, of course, is that you're Jewish.
Yes.
So how has that heritage informed your life?
Unfortunately, I'm not a very religious person at all. So it doesn't really affect me. It never did. Never did.
It's never been part of your identity.
It is part of my identity, but at a distance. You see, separate.
And why that distance?
As I said, I became more Indian.
Right.
When I was living there for 80 years,
Right.
I'm dealing with building construction, contractors. My language, I spoke Indian languages fluently because I have to deal with these people.
How many languages do you speak?
Basically 3.
But of the Indian languages?
Indian, 2.
Which ones? So
Hindi and Marathi.
Marathi.
Yeah.
And then English, of course.
English,
as
of
well,
course.
naturally.
And we did French as a second language.
Très bien, monsieur. I wonder a lot about the Indian culture, and for example, there's a larger percentage of CEOs in America of the big Fortune 1000 that are Indian than should be of their representation. There is a larger number of unicorn startups that have $1 billion valuation or higher that come from India. Why do you think that is? Why is India specifically leading that charge?
You know, I've often thought about it. The way I look at it is the way the education is given to us in India. We regurgitate.
You learn, regurgitate.
We regurgitate what we have learned. Now, the IT people, when they regurgitate what they have learned, it becomes very static. It doesn't become broad. The education of the IT guys is not a broad education. It's very specific.
Very deep.
Very deep. And they took that to India, to England, to America. I often wonder about the same thing.
Is it because compared to the more broad education offered in England with the GCSEs,
Absolutely.
in America with the liberal arts, type of approach. You guys come with expertise.
Absolutely.
Right, but this is not explained to me the leadership quality. Being very good in a deep area, like I know my IT and I'm very good at it, but leadership requires human qualities, vision, motivational skills, which have little to do with that depth. What is it that makes so many Indian CEOs so successful at it? I mean, there's so many names that I could come up with.
See, basically, the Indians come from a very poor background, most of them. So the concept is that you work hard and you succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And they envisage success flooding through hard work and concentration. And I don't like to say it, but I feel that the Indians themselves are quite clever.
Mm-hmm.
They're clever people.
Well, for sure, what I think is that you've got the cream of the cream,
Yes.
that have had to fight so hard to get here.
Absolutely.
By definition, they are smart.
Yes.
Because they're the cream that rose to the top.
Absolutely.
Yet the working hard, doing everything, doesn't necessarily rhyme with being empathic, being emotionally intelligent, being able to understand what motivates people. What is it about the Indian culture in your mind that favors, in my opinion, this type?
They want to succeed.
They want to succeed. They'll do whatever it takes.
Do whatever it takes, they want to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
They come from a bad, poor background.
Right. We just talked about success.
Yeah.
They want success. What is success in your eyes?
It's a variety of things. To bring up your children well, to see that they are happy, to see that your wife is maintained and looked after and brought to a standard, to live to a higher standard, to have a good life, basically, to mix education, culture, sport, entertainment, and everything should be not in excess.
Mm-hmm. A higher standard. What do you mean by a higher standard?
Well, it depends where you come from. You see, for me, a higher standard would be my living in Bombay. So the house I live in here is of a higher standard.
Right. A higher level.
Higher level.
A higher level of
Yes.
living, right.
Yes.
You have been diagnosed with a terminal illness.
Yes.
When did that happen? Tell us about that.
I would say less than 6 months ago, 5 months ago, 4
Right.
months ago.
How did you receive that news, and what did it make you think?
Well, you become inured. It is what it is, and there's no way I can change it. I can take the medication, I can try. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen.
In terms of the cure. But what does it do for the way you are approaching life right now?
Well, I try to sort all my little concepts,
Right.
give it to my wife and my children, and hope that it continues.
Right.
There's very little you can do. This is what you have, and you've got to accept it.
I've had several people on my podcast that are in a terminal phase, and I've interviewed a man who deals in hospice, and I put that as a context for this part, which is that oftentimes people lead their lives without thinking of death as a possibility, even,
Absolutely.
much less a finality.
Absolutely.
But if you ask people, what would you do? How would you change your lives if you knew it was all going to come to an end? Well, most people all of a sudden say, well, I do a million things differently, right? They all of a sudden wake up to the fact that there's finality. And if you look back at your life, what sort of regret, do you have any regrets?
No.
No.
No, life was good. It was easy. We worked hard. We succeeded. We did what we had to achieve. Our children are brought up well. They're all well settled. And basically, I go happy.
What is the thing you're most proud about in your life, Saul?
What do you mean?
What makes you the most pride, gives you the most pride in your life?
I have my wife. She's the sweetest, kindest, most gentle human being in the world, who's always there for me.
That's beautiful. And you've been married for 55 years.
55 years.
That's a gorgeous thing. You've been married for 55 years. It's always a journey. I mean, I've only been married for 30 years. I know it's been a journey for me. It's almost the double. When you got married, to what extent did you imagine living this type of life with Elizabeth, your wife?
I didn't look ahead. I just lived for
You were
the
present.
moment, for the present. I tried my best and hoped to succeed.
This might be impertinent, but was it an arranged marriage or
No.
it was not? It was a love marriage.
Absolutely.
Right. And how was that viewed upon by your parents?
Remember, my wife Elizabeth comes from the same community.
Mm-hmm.
My mum's brother went to England to do education
Right.
with her uncle.
Oh, I see.
So they were both national swimming champions.
Ah,
So my uncle, my mum's brother, represented India in the Helsinki Olympic Games in swimming.
wow.
So we come from a very physical side of the family.
And also quite knotted, as in terms
Yes.
of in terms of a community.
So my uncle did his FRCS in London, and her uncle did the MRCP in London together.
And those, what is the MRCP?
Well, it's a doctor, to be doctors.
I see. Right, well, lovely. So we've been talking a little bit about sports. We're just mentioning the swimming. And Adrian, of course, and Daniel, great squash players. How much has sports played in your life?
Look, to be honest, the moment Adrian became a national champion, he didn't need me all the time because he was in America. And he would come to India to play the nationals for a week and go back.
Mm-hmm. Which is tiring.
Yes. But I was never there. I was in London.
Oh, right.
Now remember, in 1989, I left architecture and building construction. And we built with my brother a very, very large warehouse in Hendon on the Broadway, which is about half an hour's drive from here. And we built the most fabulous showroom, which I designed as an architect, over 3 floors, of bathrooms, kitchens, tiles,
Everything for
sanitary,
the
anything to do. Now, when we came to London, we realized that all tiles were sold by little shops from abroad. So we decided to go in for cash and carry.
Right.
So the warehouse we built had a huge warehouse where we imported a large amount of tiles from Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And the people would drive in, load their cars, and drive away with what they liked.
So it's a little bit home decor before home decor became popular.
Absolutely.
We have these now large home bases and all that kind of
Absolutely.
stuff.
But this was specific for tiles, marble, bathrooms, kitchens, etc.
So why did you leave architecture? What was there sort of, I've done it all?
My younger brother told me, why don't you join me? You're good at drawing. You have a good concept of design. Why don't you join me and we build this building? So we went to London. We liked Hendon. And we built the building.
I want to go back to sports.
Yeah.
Because obviously you've got children or 2 kids that love their sports. What about for you? What did sports play in your life for you?
Basically, as a kid, I was a good sportsman, but I was not exceptional. I played cricket in the cricket season. I played hockey.
The all-rounder.
All round. I was never guided to become superb or exceptional.
You weren't the supreme jock of the school.
Absolutely.
But what did those activities, what did sports bring to you? How did it enrich your life, even if you weren't the best?
I don't think it enriched my life anyway, except that it made me a very healthy person.
Ah.
I was very fit. I never put on weight. I was a very quick runner. And it seemed to have served me till I got cancer.
Right. Can't avoid everything.
You can't avoid everything.
We mentioned peppers before, or at least spices.
Yes.
What's your favorite food? keep you healthy?
I don't know. I have a cook in London, or had. She got cancer, poor thing, recently. She would make me lentils and vegetables and a chapati every morning. So I would have that for many, many years. She was with us, living with us for 14 years.
It sounds a little bit like what you're saying, you know, the little piece of India in you.
Absolutely.
Starts off every morning
Absolutely.
with a proper Indian
Absolutely.
breakfast.
You hit the nail on the head.
Well, so having Adrian in particular, that I know so well, playing at that highest level, you were apparently referred to as Nostradamus. Tell us about Saul Nostradamus, aka.
Because I said to everyone in the clubs that Adrian was going to be the next national champion.
And this is because you have total lucidity. Right, so but how did you know? What was it? I mean, you can have fatherly pride, but how do you know? Because apparently you were pretty outspoken about your forecasting of who was going to win.
Well, I did it for two reasons. One was to bolster Adrian, to make him feel that he is going to be the champion, next champion. And basically because I love the game and I love the people around it, and we enjoyed the banter. We go to the clubs, we were all into clubs. So they're very private clubs with very few people.
Right. Well, squash is still a somewhat privileged sport.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not exactly accessible everywhere. Although I do remember playing in a squash court in one of the Bakhwans in Rajasthan in the back. It was an open air court in like marble. And I played a local Indian boy. He was barefoot. I was fully equipped like I would be. And I got my arse handed to me. But in terms of sports, oftentimes there's another sort of philosophy of life that says, is it better to focus on what you're good at or improve what you're bad at?
To me, I believe that if you are studying or playing a sport, you concentrate on what you're good at, because the moment you become the best, every door opens for you.
Even in the sport. So, for example, I'm playing squash. Let's say I'm very good at doing rails, down the line, let's say. But my cross court isn't quite as good.
Yeah.
Should I get better at my rails or should I work on my cross court?
That's up to you. But the way I see it is you concentrate on what you're best at. Because you become better and you become the best. And when you're the best, the world is open to you.
All right, so you have told me that you supported Adrian to help boost him.
Absolutely.
But apparently as Nostradamus, you weren't only deciding about Adrian.
You see, it was a lot of club banter. We enjoyed teasing each other, and I would say outrageous things.
Just to provoke.
Just to provoke.
Right.
So there was a boy who was very friendly with me, and he coined the term Nostradamus.
I see.
And he puts it in the newspapers, and it became quite...
Mr. Ezra votes for. Then the bookies want to know who is there, right? When you look at somebody in terms of selecting them to work for you or selecting them to be the number one because you think that person is a great player, what qualities do you look for in somebody?
Basically, I would like... are you talking squash?
In particular, squash, but it could be... Let's start with that.
If you have no speed, if you're not fast, super fast, you're going nowhere.
Yeah.
So I look at a person who's fast. Secondly, a person who is obsessed with his game. If you are not obsessed, you're going nowhere, because you will improve by the amount of hours you spend on the squash court. So it's very, very simple.
And what about in work, when you're looking at trying to hire somebody for one of your cabinets, your offices? What were the qualities that you looked for in employees?
Basically, we had many sales girls working on the floor. All that we saw was someone who could speak fluently, who was gentle looking, who was ready to help and knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a very big deal because there were many, many such young girls
Mm-hmm.
and women who would fit the bill.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the qualities of people, though, what I'm looking at here is not just the competency, but within the character, the attitude of people.
It's very varied. You know, you can't really put your finger on one person. Each person
Right.
has something great about them.
Mm.
So you just have to accept it.
So in terms of the lessons learned for you in, let's say, in business, what would be advice that you would give to people who, for example, want to be architects or be in business in general?
It's so varied because architecture itself, you can be a designer based on design. You can be building housing for the common people, which is totally different. So everything has its own place.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't put your finger on that particular space until you actually go and work there.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn for yourself what you are good at.
Right.
And you train to become the best at what you're good at.
Right. Well, then I'm going to pull back on something you said, which was that at 16 you were told you were going to do this.
Yes.
Looking back, isn't that saying, well, you're not allowed to try other things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it is part of life over there.
Right.
You accept what your parents tell them.
Right. Is that a good thing?
I'm not sure. But it worked out.
Yeah.
It worked out for me. I don't know.
Right.
It could go bad.
Right. No, there's no easy path.
No.
What is your experience or your feeling about imperfection?
I'm rather intolerant. I feel that every single person has a future. And all they have to do is to see the future
Mm-hmm.
and see where they're going and try and correct any mistakes they make
Mm-hmm.
and just improve themselves because there's so much there. Life has so much to offer. And why would you just leave it out?
Going back to your experience in architecture, two questions. The first is, what makes architecture meaningful to you as a person?
I think basically the love of beauty.
Hmm.
For me, I would tell my wife what suits her or what doesn't. I put together properties. I buy property in London. I redevelop them. I enjoy it. It's my pleasure to see the beauty of what I've built.
Hmm. Is beauty objective?
To me, yes. May not be to many people.
It's a funny way of expressing it because it's subjectively objective.
Yes, you're right.
The idea of beauty being objective would suggest that there's one standard of an objective idea
Absolutely.
that everybody
Absolutely.
agrees with that.
No.
Not everybody agrees with that, for sure.
This is my objective.
Yeah.
It may not be yours.
What's the most provocative thought that you've ever had?
I never thought about it.
But you've been provocative a lot, you know.
I am
Yeah.
by nature provocative.
Yeah. But to think of the summit of all your provocations, it's hard because you have so many.
I just feel that people should love rather than hate. There's too much hate in this world.
Why do you think that is?
I basically believe that religion is something that should die out. It is something that separates people for no reason. There's not a single person who has seen God, heard God, felt God, or spoke to God. And yet, they kill in the name of God.
Indeed. I would argue that religion also brings people together.
Absolutely.
Therefore, it serves, I'm not religious,
Yes.
but it does seem to serve a purpose
Absolutely.
that's missing in today's life
Absolutely.
because we don't have much community.
You see, the religion that is based on love is beautiful, so long as it is based on love and not hate. The moment the ingredient of hate enters into your society, then society is doomed.
Do you like to read?
I love to read.
What are some of the most powerful books you've ever read?
I don't remember them, but I used to read a book a week.
Yeah. There are no books that stand out?
Not really.
No. Not even Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead?
Of course. As a young boy, Ayn Rand was...
The Fountainhead,
Absolutely.
Howard Rourke.
But I rejected it.
Oh, you did?
I did.
What did you reject?
Because I wanted to become a commercial architect. I wanted to make money. I wanted to make big buildings, huge projects, and the Fountainhead was narrow.
Yeah. In terms of the buildings you've done, which is the building that stands out for you in your memory that this one was cool?
The first building I ever built.
Wow. Why?
I don't know. Because I really worked very hard on it. And it was the first big job I ever got.
Would you say...
It allowed me to get married because I earned enough money.
Oh, nice. Well, I was going to say, sometimes it could have been a passion project.
All of them are passion projects. Right. Basically, I changed the concept of the way buildings were built in Bombay. I came to England in 1971. And I loved the semi-detached houses and the way, the simplistic way England was built. And when I went back to India, a certain part of Bombay had restricted the floor space index to half. So you could not build tall buildings because the atomic energy was nearby.
Right.
So I devised a concept of following English architecture. And instead of building ground and 3 upper buildings, I built ground and 1 upper houses, semi-detached houses. And it was just accepted in total by the Indian public.
Blessed.
Because
it was sort of a blessed idea.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're living in a house, ground and 1 upper, rather than a flat.
Right.
And for the same price.
Makes sense.
So it made me into an icon in architecture.
Nice.
Because I was the first person to conceive of this idea. And it happened because I came here.
Right. So travel is good.
It's wonderful. Absolutely.
What has travel brought to you?
Ideas.
Yeah. Well, give me some ideas that travel helped you to understand.
As I said, coming here. And also what happened was my father had a pharmaceutical company. So when he died, we took over with my uncle part of the pharmaceuticals in Bombay. And we traveled. So we ultimately introduced to England the hepatitis test.
Hepatitis B or C? Or both?
B. Yeah. So there was no... jaundice was a very endemic in Bombay at that time, in India. So we introduced from Burroughs Wellcome hepatest, and we introduced it to England, to India.
Oh, I see.
So it was fun.
In life, there's inevitably ups and downs.
Of course.
How do you deal with the downs?
I just try and carry on. Basically, I think after my first child, when Adrian was born, I felt a little weird because I had to look after a child. I'd never experienced that before. So for me, I became, I think, slightly depressed for about 6 months. But I got out of it and I just carried on.
Makes me think of a child that has a younger brother that comes around. No one's taking care of me. My wife is busy.
Absolutely.
But in today's world, there's a lot of talk of depression and mental health.
Yeah.
especially in the West, in developed world. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I blame social media because basically people have to intermingle to have confidence in each other and to learn to love each other. By isolating yourself on the iPad and on your telephone and just listening to TikTok and things like that, you lose touch with people. And the moment you lose touch with people, all the fears come to the front. And depression is something which is a relation of isolation. And when you're isolated on your social media, it's very likely you can get depressed.
It's obviously a little paradoxical because social media, first of all, has the word social in it and allows you to connect with everybody everywhere.
Absolutely.
And yet we have depression.
And yet you're alone.
Or isolation, solitude.
You're isolated.
All right, so get off your social media and go meet people.
Again, you can't do that. You know, it's heads I win, tails you lose. You can't. Because the moment you do that, you are isolated from the rest of society.
Right.
So basically what you need is a balance.
Balance between being social on media.
So sport is the best form of balance.
Nice. Sport is the best form of balance.
Best form of balance.
Because you can use the apps to make the game, but then you're out there sweating and you're meeting in real.
Absolutely. And you communicate.
I love that.
Through sport.
So, looking at the twilight of your life here, what would you say is the most important lesson or a piece of enlightenment that you've learned in your life?
I think basically you just have to get on with life and be happy. And happiness is based on the people around you. And the more you make the people around you happy, the happier you are. There's no way we can change certain things in life. You have to learn to accept it, and you have to learn to accept it with equanimity.
Yeah, there's that expression which is, God give me give me the strength to, or the intelligence to know when I can make a difference, and if I don't make the difference, give me the courage to let it be.
Well, you said it. I can't say it better.
No, well, it wasn't me. It wasn't I who said it in the first place. But what about legacy? What do you feel would be your legacy?
I feel that I've just done my duty, and I've done it well. That's it.
In your children and your grandchildren, what type of messages would you like to leave them with?
Work hard. Love your family. Keep close together. And play sport.
And eat well. Stay healthy. In terms of your life, just last zone of question, you've seen a lot of change. 1941 to 2025. Huge. What are the biggest things that have changed? What do you think of that? This is a huge piece of change.
I don't know. Life has been a gradual change. I've never had any terrible happenings or any problems which would distract me from what I'm doing. So it's been very easy. Basically, I have nothing to complain about, and I die happy.
What about the future? What do you think about on the horizon?
Don't start me on that.
I want to start with you. I want to get going. Let's dive in. What is the future hold? What do we need to do? What do we need to do to make the future better?
In which country?
Well, let's start with England.
England is doomed.
Why is that?
Because of the Labour government and the very poor management of the Conservatives.
Right. So the politicians are at fault.
Yes, of course. Of course. There's no question about it. You know, there's left and there's right. I can't see why there should be any left or any right. All you need to do is to make people live happily in this country, not to work in a manner by which you don't work and you expect other people to support you.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has to share. And sharing makes you stronger. It doesn't make you weaker. You do not say that I will help one section of society and screw the rest of them. That is stupid. You must embrace everyone. And if I have an ability, enhance that ability.
Mm-hmm.
And what I achieve, you celebrate,
Mm-hmm.
not denigrate.
Right. Celebrate others' success.
Celebrate everyone's success,
Mm-hmm.
whoever is successful,
Mm-hmm.
and encourage people to become successful, because that is the future.
Nice. What about national identity? We've talked a little bit about religion. We've talked about how you have a dual culture.
See, unfortunately, again, the politicians have been bringing in people without the concept of their nationality and even the way their culture thinks. And it's very hard work after that.
Mm-hmm. To get back to.
To get back to it. It's, I would say, impossible.
All right. How important is it? Because there are some schools of thought that talk about national identity as some sort of superficial construct.
Well, it is a superficial construct if you take it over 500 years. But 500 years is a long time.
Right.
So it depends how you look at
Superficial. 500 years of life, yeah, quite a long life.
Yeah.
So in terms of India's national identity,
Yeah.
Do you feel that it is in a better place?
Yes.
Or it is in a better place?
No question. You see, they are focused. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Being focused is key.
I don't know about that, but they are focused on their religion and their culture.
What is the silliest thing you've ever done?
You have to ask my wife.
That's good. How important is sense of humor in life?
Well, I don't think I have a very, very large sense of humor, but I enjoy being funny, but now and again, not too often.
What about the role of laughter in
Sorry?
life? The role of laughter in life. Because I mean, in India, you're famous for having the laughing sessions.
Yes, I'm basically a happy person because life has made me happy.
So where does luck come into that?
Again, it's a very, very, very sensitive question and a very difficult question. Luck plays an important part of the person's life. But when a person goes through life, he must evaluate every single aspect of it and take advantage of his luck. If you see luck and you turn your back, then you can't say that I had bad luck. It was your bad decisions, your lack of knowledge of where your opportunities lie. So luck, of course, is definitely there. But you make a lot of your own luck.
Another topic that is quite contemporary is resilience. What's your observation with regard to the resiliency of today's world, looking specifically at your children and your grandchildren? What about is resilience an important quality, and how do you become more resilient?
You are lost without resilience. Then you just drift. For me, resilience is based on education. Education. Learn, because knowledge is powerful. Every single thing you learn that history repeats itself. You learn so many things and you keep it within you and you become more resilient with your knowledge.
What do you think of there's a term, it's called epigenetics, or generational influence. In other words, your ancestors.
I am very much, I believe very much into that. See, basically what happens is that we pass on what we have. And that is our culture, our knowledge, our resilience, and every little thing in minute forms. But it is always pertinent, always. And genetics plays a huge part in our lives. So we are genetically engineered to help ourselves to do what we want to do. We may not accept it in total, but that little sliver is always there.
All right, very last question. Has music been important to you at all?
No.
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 Why not?
I think I was a bit obsessive with architecture, with my building construction, with my building in London, and I never thought that it was important enough. Of course, when I was a young kid, we did rock and roll and Elvis Presley.
Punk.
Yeah, when I was young. But the moment I joined architecture and I began to see that I had to succeed.
Yeah.
So it became secondary.
Yeah, so you're...
I miss that.
You miss...
Music.
You miss music.
Yeah.
Does music have a place for you right now?
Not really.
Not really.
My wife loves it, but...
Yeah. And does she like to dance?
Actually, I dance.
You dance.
I dance. I was a very, very good dancer.
You like to dance as well?
Yes, I had one of my girlfriends was a professional dancer. And I used to dance with her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, therefore, I would argue you had music in your life to dance.
Yes, of course, as a kid.
Right.
Till I was 21.
Right, I see. Right. Well, listen, what last words would you like to close with in our little chat here?
I think it's been a pleasure living in London. I've enjoyed every moment over here. Things have been good. I love my wife. I love my children. I love the way we brought up our family. And I say goodbye with a smile.
Beautiful thing. Saul, thank you for sharing your words. It's been a true treat.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.